Hey, it's Laura with Beadbox Bargains, and today we're going to talk about the gemstone properties and identification of lapis lazuli. And it's just some of the common imitations, as well as one I recently received from a new vendor, which is definitely not real lapis. And we're going to see if we can figure out what it is. And we'll do that by comparing natural lapis, dyed lapis, and some imitation lapis. So it's going to be fun. Let's take a look. All right, so here's a strand of natural lapis. Lapis is a composite stone, and generally, the more lazurite it has, the bluer it is. You can see some white swirls of calcite, and some beads will have metallic glints of pyrite as well. And you can have lots of other minerals in lapis, but those are going to be your most common. And in general, the purer the lazurite, the bluer it is and the more expensive it is. As a result, lapis is frequently dyed a dark blue to give it that nice even look, and I have nothing against dyed lapis. If that's the color you're going for, it's a wonderful, affordable way to get it. It's just very important to me that if you're buying dyed lapis, you're paying a dyed lapis price and not a natural price. So I'm going to talk about how to tell the difference. All right, here is a strand that has been dyed, and right away you can tell it's a much more homogeneous color. You really don't have much of the white calcite visible. It's all picked up the dye. It's a little bit shinier of a finish. It feels and looks a little different. It feels a little more like a lacquer-y type thing going on there. And it's still very nice quality. It's beautiful. If you want that dark blue look, it's a great way to get it. But again, if your lapis is all homogeneous like this, if it's all picked up pretty much the same color, and here's one you can really tell the way that the white has picked up the dye there. You have all these little like lighter blue swirls where normally you'd see white swirls. If you're not paying a lot of money for your strand and it looks like this, it's probably dyed. And on the other hand, with the natural, I'll show you again a bit closer. You have the variation in colors. You have those white calcite swirls, and you have some occasional pyrite glimmer. And again, this isn't necessarily going to be the case, but if you're paying less than $50 for a strand of lapis, you're probably going to expect to have some white in it someplace. So if you don't see it anywhere, that's a good indication that it's been dyed. Here's another strand that is undyed. And again, you can see just the variation in the different blues. It's slight, but it's there. And even the lighter blue ones, you can see white in them and not just all that same blue color. Here's another strand of dyed. These are 10 millimeter. And you can see the beautiful pyrite inclusions there. And you can tell there's enough variation to know that these are genuine lapis. You can just from the way the patterns in the stone, like I said, that little pyrite glint is a good giveaway too. But they're a much more homogeneous color. They've got that kind of like lacquer-y feel to them. They've been dyed. They're still absolutely gorgeous. And again, I have no issue with dyed stones as long as they are marked as such and priced as such. That's something I care a lot about. However, I'm going to show you these next. So these were from a vendor we haven't done business with before, and they were priced very reasonably, competitively, not so low that it was like, oh, this is too good to be true. But with that nice English cut, it was a good price. I decided to give it a try. What we received did not match the picture. These are just a very different texture than the lapis. They are that dark blue color. So again, that kind of clues me into they've probably been dyed, whatever they are. But they're missing the pyrite to them, and they just have a much more granular look and feel versus the swirls that you see in natural lapis. So we're going to look at some lapis imitators and see if we can figure out what these are. Side note, anytime this happens with a vendor, while sometimes it can be an honest mistake, I mark it in the file and we do not do business with them again, because authenticity is very, very important to me. All right, so this is a dyed quartz. I have seen this sold in some places as lapis, but it very much is not. You've got a kind of the same granular texture, but this has a more semi-translucent feel to it And this is a very opaque stone, and it has some dark inclusions and some lighter inclusions. It's just got a different texture to it than the quartz, so I do not believe this is a quartz strand. I wanted to show you that so you could see one common confusion. The other thing I sometimes see sold as lapis is sodalite. This is another dark blue gemstone. This is a natural stone. It's gorgeous in its own right, but it is a very different blue than lapis. Where lapis you have more of that indigo, and it can vary to the more denim colors. Sodalite is going to be much more navy blue than an indigo, and it will also have white and dark swirls, but they will be much more sort of crystalline looking in their inclusions and less spread throughout the stone than the calcite swirls that you see in lapis. So there's a comparison for you. Again, sodalite's a beautiful natural gemstone, but it is not lapis. And I don't think that's what we have here. Again, this has clearly been dyed, and the texture in the white markings just doesn't match up. So that's not sodalite. One thing that's newer on the market that I have seen is dyed larvikite. This is a natural strand, but is often dyed dark blue. And so when I'm trying to tell, the things that I look at are the patterns in the stone, the patterns of inclusion in the stone. And now that's not always going to be the same from one rough to the other, but you can get an idea. With the dyed larvikite though, you would still expect to see a little bit of that silver shimmer. Sometimes they use much lower grade larvikite to dye, and it's not always present, so it's not a perfect thing. This is a little bit more of a matte. It's not matte, it's polished, but it's a little bit less shiny than the larvikite though. It hasn't taken quite the same polish. So I don't believe that these are larvikite either, but that is, again, something I've seen on the market. And what you're going to want to look for there are these dark inclusions in the stone and the shape of them, and the shape of the inclusions in your lapis. Lapis is usually gonna have much more swirled throughout and less blocky, larger markings than the larvikite will. And sometimes you have smaller, but it's still very much a dotted versus more of a swirled throughout pattern with the inclusions. All right, so my theory that right now, I think what we're dealing with here is dyed kiwi jasper. Because this is another thing, this is a natural color, but it is very commonly dyed, and I have seen it advertised as lapis in the dyed variety. And the reason I think that is if you look at, first of all, the gloss on the stone is very similar. And if you look at the patterns, they kind of match up where you've got these lighter areas, and you can tell in here they didn't take the dye quite as well, or they just look different with the dye. They're still a lighter color. And the dark markings are a very similar texture. Here, this is a good example. You've got these lighter areas and darker areas that are very similar to the patterning on kiwi jasper. You've got that same kind of polish where it is polished, but it's not quite the same high shine as we see with the larvikite. And again, this is a newer product on the market, but I have seen it. And the factories that I work with will clearly market dyed jasper, but less scrupulous factories, and you do have to be careful, particularly dealing with overseas sellers. They will use a picture of lapis in their product description, and then they'll send you this stuff. So we were able to resolve this. I very politely emailed them and was like, hey, I think maybe you sent us the wrong item, and showed them a close-up, and they were like, oh yeah, it was the wrong SKU, we'll send you the right thing. And they did, or well, it's en route, so we'll see. But and it could have been an honest mistake, and I will give them another chance, but we are going to be closely reviewing future shipments. And like I said, we do keep a file, we do mark these things to make sure that we're giving you guys the highest quality materials. And I just want you to be aware, because lapis is one of those stones that you do see a lot of dupes, and you do see a lot of false advertisements around. Again, here is a strand, it's not the same cut, but it's the faceted genuine lapis. And you can just see that the patterns on it do not match. The color, while it's very, very similar, like it's not a bad dupe, it's gonna be similar to that dyed lapis. They probably use that same color dye. You don't have any of these pyrite shimmers. You don't have, you don't have quite the same polish on it. and it feels a little different. Lapis is heavier. Lapis, because of that pyrite, that super metallic composition there, pyrite's heavy stuff. And it doesn't have the same feel. So just to clarify, I am not a gemologist. I have been buying beads for like 20 years now, which is a little scary. So I'm just working off my experience here. But I wanted to share that with you guys. So be on the lookout, particularly when you're shopping with overseas sellers. And also remember that the picture you see on the website is not always the product that you receive when you're shopping on marketplaces. So check your beads. We will always, every time we get, if it's a product that we've had before, every time we get it in, we'll double check, make sure the pictures match, make sure that the products match. And particularly with new sellers we haven't worked with before, or new factory partners we haven't worked with before, we will review extra closely so we can catch things like this. And this was an example of the product photo came through the listing, and we looked at it, we're like, our photographer was like, I don't think this is lapis. And after the photography, it goes through our quality review, which is me. It's like, yep, that's not lapis. So it's an interesting thing, shopping on the multinational gemstone market. And generally people are honest, and you can't assume that's always the case. So again, here is some of our natural lapis, and look for those pyrite swirls if you can find them. Look for the way that the white mixes in with the blue. You don't want the big choppy pieces of black like that. That's a good sign that it is a different stone. And if the color is super uniform and has that like almost lacquer gloss to it, it's very likely dyed. So yeah, thanks so much for watching. I hope this was helpful. And let us know if there are other gemstones you'd like to see featured this way. I wish I had some blue spot stone to show you, because that is another common thing I see advertised as lapis. And the big thing is it looks kind of like Dalmatian jasper, but in blue and white. And you're not going to have the swirl patterns, you're going to have spotted patterns. So pattern of the stone is really important when you're trying to identify it. If you want to get some real lapis, you can do that on beadboxbargains.com. We will always clearly mark any treatments such as dye as well, anytime we know of or suspect them. So yeah, thank you so much, and happy beading.